This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the Town of North Haven.
All right, I had to improvise tonight. I'm not sure what happened to the gavel, but hopefully it's still somewhere in town. All righty, welcome everyone to the Wednesday, April 16th, 2025 meeting of the North Haven Board of Finance. A couple things before we get started. Mr. Fried is not with us this evening. I'm sure most of you know that he had a minor health incident. I'm told he's doing well. We exchanged some texts. We wish him Godspeed, and I'm sure we'll see him at this time next month and probably sooner here in Town Hall. Thanks to all of you who attended the budget meeting a week or so ago. And the agenda tonight at the bottom, I made sure we put down the next meeting, which is the annual budget town meeting, which is May 12th, 2025 at the North Haven High School at 7 p.m. That'll be followed roughly a month later by the referendum on Tuesday, May 20th. Why don't we start with the minutes of the March 19th meeting? If I could have a motion, please.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Any questions, comments on the minutes, please? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. A couple things under old business. First of all, we did have gotten a number of letters that have arrived over the last month or so. We got a number in our package this month. We had a few last month. I didn't count them, but I'd say there are probably about 20 in total. And my estimation is about two-thirds of them were written in favor of the existing Board of Education budget, and maybe a third of them were recommending we increase the number of firefighters in town. We also have a letter in the package regarding Quinnipiac. This goes back to the grant money. Well, I should say the contribution they made to the town of $300,000. It's from Bethany Zemba, Vice President of Strategy and Community Relations, and it's clarifying that the money that was given to the town was to be used for the Northeast Company Fire Station. Mike had asked for a couple of reports last month, which we did include in the package, Mike. One was the contracts which we have in town, their status. They're all current. There is one that is been negotiated but's not signed, which is clerical. And the next one to expire after that would be Public Works in June of 2026. Mike, you asked for some information on the medical, pharmacy, and vision claims, which was included in the package. Bless you. And the Finance Department did ask the assessor for some information on the largest tax assessment changes, which are discussed here. But as you'll notice, they're all new projects, so it's hard to say. And Gary did not give us any numbers as to what the change was on those projects. And one of them, by the way, is Slate School, which I question whether or not that's even taxable. And then, if I wouldn't mind asking Ingrid to give us an update on the CAFR, please.
Sure. The town side has finalized everything that has been given to the auditors. We are now working with Board of Ed to finalize their reconciliation. And when that's done, we're anticipating that to be done by next week. We should have an audit in a month.
Thanks, Ingrid.
And just following up on that, we will receive a report. When do you think that will be? And will we actually have an auditor come before us, or will you, Ingrid, be presenting it?
They will present.
Okay, so the
Yes.
auditor will actually present.
The auditor will present.
Okay, thank you.
All right. We will later on this evening finalize the budget for the 2025 and 2026 fiscal year, but we'll start with our normal reports, and let's go to the revenues. Before we get into the questions, Ingrid, you and I and Rich talked about the taxes and where we are with the collection rate. Could you just talk about that for a second, please?
Oh, yes. We're anticipating a shortage of about $400,000. This year, we're running a little bit behind on collections.
And just as a reminder to the members, we did increase the collection rate by a $250,000 last year from what we had previously had of that.
Yeah, we're not extremely behind in collections, because we're at 98.3% right now? Or is that 98.3 of the 98.75?
That's 98.3 of the 98.75.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and we are.
And last year at this time, it was more like 98.7. Things could turn around, but right now it is tracking behind.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, I'm just going to open the revenue up to questions. There's a bunch of items on here which we've talked about, and the members can certainly ask questions about them if they like, but I'll skip my comments for tonight.
Actually, related to the tax revenue, given we're getting a little bit ahead, but since we're on this topic, is there an expectation from the tax collector's office that there will be an even greater deficit next year in collecting taxes, given the fact that with the reval, the overall tax assessed amount and then the appraised amount and the assessed amount is going to be so much larger? Are we expecting from her office that any type of feedback on collection rates?
Stacy's made no indication of that.
Okay.
That's a good question, Nancy, and I don't recall ever really getting a projection on tax collections from the tax assessor. However,
It's a very unusual year.
yeah, it would be something to think about when we set the mill rate and
The collection.
and the collection rate.
Absolutely. As well as anticipating interest and liens and all things associated with
Correct.
collection taxes. Yeah.
Other comments, questions on the revenue side?
We seem to be doing extremely well, continue to do very well with the interest on short-term investments at 174% of what we originally budgeted, bringing year-to-date about $1.5 million. So I think that's wonderful, and hopefully that will continue throughout the rest of this year. And overall, our revenues are at 93.2% of budgeted.
Anything else from the members on revenue? If not, why don't we go to the expense side? Ingrid, just for myself, did you get a chance to look on page 17 any more into the insurance and what the story was on that?
Yes, we made the one more month of contribution there
Okay.
for medical.
All right, so that's why it's running
So that's
83.6.
actually 10 months
10 months, okay, thank you.
instead of 9.
Okay.
What were all the repairs at the library? That seemed to be pretty high.
Yes, please.
On page 4, building maintenance and repair.
There was a $16,000 excess cost of our bonding package when we had it. It was for $150,000, and the total amount was $166,000. So that was that, and then we had to rebuild a heating pump for $5,000. So that was some expenses that we did not anticipate.
Okay, thank you.
The excess cost at $16,000 will probably get charged off to the second bonding issue that we have for roofs. There's no reason to hit her line for it.
I have a question. I know what a public stenographer does, but why is that I mean, it's over what we planned, but what's the reasoning for that?
What page is that, Diane, please?
It's on page 4. I mean, it's not a lot, I've seen it, but it's running over a little bit, well, according to the percentage, but what exactly what's the situation that we need the stenographer for? I'm just,
Well, I don't know if it's appeals, but planning and zoning uses stenographer. They're very limited and far in between, and it actually there was a few bills from a previous year that got rolled into this year based on timing.
okay, all right, thank you.
I mean, it was the vendor's mistake, but you still need to be fair with them.
Right.
On page 6, what's the duplicating machine rental thing that seems to be so
These
high?
are copier machines, and we have new contracts.
Wow, that's a big jump,
Yeah.
yeah.
We are changing all the copy machines in town as well. A lot of the contracts were just leases that kept getting renewed. We're now leasing with the option to buy, and then we'll just run the machines into the ground before we release. So that'll save us money long-term.
Were any of the leases expired, and were we paying
Some
holdover
of them are
payments?
expired, and we're paying holdover. We're getting them turned over as fast as we
Right.
can.
Does it make any sense to have one master lease?
Timing's different on a lot of them. Different departments, different requirements.
Yeah.
Some of them don't have. But the main thing, and Alex is the one that's kind of tasked with getting some of these things squared away. I don't like leases that just become leases again. 3 years later, it's a new lease. 3 years later, it's a new lease.
Yeah.
No, I'll take that machine and I'll run it into the ground.
Right,
When it can't function anymore, maybe it shifts to another office that doesn't have heavy usage.
yeah, right.
So overall, it'll all come out in the wash and end up saving us dollars.
Okay. All right, floor is open. Other members with questions on the expense side?
On page 6, under personnel policy expenses, it seems as though we have several line items in this category. Personnel policy expense as a line item, police department reserve accrued benefits, unemployment compensation, and labor negotiations that all seem to be very, very low levels of expenditure. Is that something that is unique to this year, or is that something that we expect in the future?
Labor negotiations is low because I do it. And I just bring the lawyer in at the very end.
Right.
So I am saving dollars there, but I still need those dollars going forward because I'm trying to rework all our pensions and I need legal for that. As far as reserve accrued benefits, some of them have changed.
Yeah, I think the
for fire.
PD,
Yeah.
is it the PD? Whoever was receiving that benefit is no longer receiving it, so we took it out of the budget for next year.
Yeah. If some of these are older personnel that, or spouses that have passed, so the reserves change.
I
And
see.
some, actually, one of them I think got eliminated completely.
Yes.
It's not next year's budget.
Okay. And you have negotiated the vast majority of the collective bargaining agreements, so for next year, there's only one left, right?
Yeah, I'm just waiting, I just need them to finalize it, and then we'll have a special board of selectmen approve it. get
So
it
it'll be
signed
finished
and
this
done.
year then?
Oh, it'll be
Yeah.
done before
So then
contracts expire.
Next year, we won't have any to negotiate.
Yeah, no, I have one that's coming due, I have Public Works, I think.
Oh,
26.
so,
26, yeah. So I'll start Public Works in January, probably.
okay. So there's one left.
There's always a contract coming around, there's 7 different unions.
There's a couple of different departments that their overtime is high again. I know we talk about it every time.
I mean, streets and roads.
Yeah, that was
I
one
mean,
I
we had
had.
some really bad storms this year with ice and always on a weekend, always on a holiday. Yeah, I mean,
As long as they're all watching
Yeah,
the
in
bottom
building and
line. so.
inspection, we had a consultant resign, so they had to pick up the work
oh yeah, for public works.
for public works. And senior center's kind of minimal, but they had some
Yep, they
extra
had it too.
activities
Yep.
for in the winter.
On page 17, insurance employees seems to be tracking high.
That's what Tim was referring to. We did an extra contribution, so there's
Okay.
actually 10 months
Okay.
instead of 9.
Is there a cost savings associated with paying ahead?
No, we don't pay it, we're
It's not-
self-insured.
We're self-insured.
Yeah.
All those lines will be expensed out by end of year 100%. We space it out over a 12-month period just so it reflects something. Technically, we could expense it all,
At the beginning of the
July
year.
1.
On page 8, the police, the shift differential, is that have anything to do with,
It had to do with their contract.
Contract.
While we picked up the wages, it was one of those changes that was made at the very end of their contract negotiation. As insane as it's not big dollars, but if they were getting $1 shift for second shift and now they're getting 2,
okay,
it is percentage-wise is a big increase.
okay.
Anything else from the expense side?
Just
For the town anyways?
two last ones. Both community services and recreation had a pretty high number for dues and expenses. Is that just annual stuff they have to do, or?
Yes. That's their licenses.
Okay, that makes
Some
sense.
years it won't be as much, some years they're all due.
Okay.
It depends. Most of the dues and expenses are state mandates.
And just out of curiosity, I know that we have a department that's referred to as legal, but that doesn't seem to be all of the legal costs or legal expenses.
What
So-
page are you on, Nancy?
Well,
It's early on.
that's on page 2.
Okay.
I'm just trying to get a sense for all the different types of legal fees. Are they just kind of nestled into personal policy, or I'm just trying to determine where else these legal fees are within this expenditure budget?
In 115, you have the town attorney who has a retainer.
Yep.
There's legal advertisement, a lot of it comes from public works, land use.
Yeah.
Legal fees, blight, there's liens we put on property for blight.
Yeah,
As
but-
an example, we just got in another 85,000 for blight.
Right, I'm just saying that I think as a town, my guess is we pay more than $144,000 in legal fees.
Not really.
Well, every other department also has a legal one.
Yeah, the departments may have a few legal lines, but it's mostly in land use.
Land use, inland, zoning, board of finance.
Yeah, but a lot of those are legal notices.
That's
Legal
advertising.
notices,
That-
right.
Yeah,
that's-
if you're
that's-
talking about
Yeah.
postings that they have to make,
Yeah.
especially, there was a bill before the state which would have allowed us to put this on the website, and the state did not approve it. And with the condensing of news agencies, shall we say, in Connecticut, what it costs us to place an ad is insane.
Yeah, those are very.
The state should reconsider allowing municipalities just to post it on their website. Instead of paying, a typical posting is like $1,000 to put something in the paper. And land use puts a lot of things in the paper.
I see legal advertising with some other departments, but I don't see just raw legal fees.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, it's just basically
Notices.
advertising postings that they have to do.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
I have two questions on page 10 under the animal control. So there's a lot of maintenance and repair. How many, do they have just like one vehicle?
Yes.
Okay, so is that an aged, do we know the age of that vehicle? I'm just curious because there's a lot of repairs going.
I don't. It's not new, that's for sure. I don't know. I don't know the age of the vehicle.
Okay, well, maybe we could look at that. And then the building maintenance and repair, that as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of mandates with the state that temperature and humidity be maintained. There was a big thing with AC, I think, with them.
Yeah, they
There was
replaced
something.
a hot water heater and that was 4,200. and the line is 5,000, so that was,
Yeah, just the
Yeah,
water
I
heater.
thought there was
Water.
something that they needed to do
Yeah, they-
with that, and
Hot
I was-
water
that's why I
heater.
was asking. I
Yeah.
remember that it was in need of work. Okay, thank you.
Anything else from the members on the expense side before we go to the Board of Ed?
At this time, can I, as an expenditure item, could I discuss the medical, pharmacy, and vision claims report that we received?
Go right ahead.
Yeah. So, that's a big number in our expenses, and something we have to budget for the following year. And I want to thank the finance department for providing this and fulfilling some other requests that I made. Thank you very much. The latest information that I see here is that the February 25 claims number is about the same as the February 24 claims number. So the replacement of one to the other is not going to change the forecast too much, but they were both high numbers. But overall, we see the fixed costs continuing to increase on a year-to-year basis by about 15 to 20%, and that may have to do with some of our stop-loss expenses. But the bottom line, which is the bottom line in this report, the through 2/28/25, so that's fiscal year from last July 1st. In the far right corner, it's showing that the ratio of the expenses, overall total expenses of the medical, pharmacy, and vision claims to our budget at this point is 96.7%. And so we're 3.3% under budget, which if projected, if it stays true to the end of the year, which it rarely would, it's showing a possibility of a $272,000 surplus. And so I just want to say that our agents, Brown & Brown and Blue Point, yes. They've been very right on in terms of the town side in how to project our self-insured program budgeting. So that's
Mike,
been good.
I'm sorry, I believe those numbers don't relate to the medical. It's the medical and pharmacy plan costs, whatever PEPM, I'm not sure what that is. I think it's just the last two columns what I'm getting at, Mike. If you do the math there, take the very last row here, right? You got the medical and pharmacy plan cost. For some reason, it's only, I'm not sure why, it's 2,717.
No, that's per member. That's the
Okay, so per member, okay.
Yeah.
But if you take that compared to the budget, that's the 96.7.
Yes. You could, it's either the last set of columns there or the previous to the last set of columns showing that
yeah, all right.
our cost to the rates that were projected.
Okay.
So, not bad, but maybe we might revisit what our budget should be regarding medical in the future, but for now, we'll let it stand as it is.
Michael, keep in mind that there's not only claims, but there's other expenses that are associated with the cost.
Yeah. Right. So I was looking at total
This
costs.
is, yes.
I looked at total costs. But the
All the
claims,
other
yeah, the
things?
claims, right, well, the claims are a big part of it.
Right.
Yeah, they're a big component. Certainly, yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No, thank you, Mike. All right, just, let's move on to the Board of Ed. I just want to ask the members to please go to page 2 for a second before we open up to questions. So this is the report from Christian, and then at the top of page 2 here, where it talks about the reserve accounts. I would just point out two things. One, the Workman's Compensation Fund says that's the cash balance, so I would caution the members that that's not an accrual number, and given that they're still trying to close out the books, I think that's fair to say we're going to see some adjustments in the Workman's Comp number, maybe or maybe not in the medical reserve number. And also, it's my understanding that the balances here on the last three items, spec ed, cap reserve, and the non-lapsing, is probably closer to zero than what you see here. Any questions, comments on the Board of Ed side?
So just to your point, Tim, how are you discounting the last 3 points, special ed, capital, and non-lapsing as being a zero balance?
Because I know they're still trying to close the books over there, and there's had to be some adjusting entries, which, again, they're not finalized yet because they haven't closed the books yet, but I know there's had to be some entries over there that have had to use some of these dollars.
I see. So in order to close the books on last year's budget, they are taking the balances that we see currently.
Correct.
I see. So related to Board of Ed, yes, I have a couple of different points. I certainly appreciate having this summary from Christian, and regarding they have bullet pointed 3 different line items that they'd like to call to our attention. The first is reimbursable wages. This particular line is associated with the nursery school program, and they have a check for $27,000 in order to replenish that particular expenditure line item. So I guess what I don't understand, and perhaps Ingrid or Rich could explain this to me, this is a line item in their budget that is funded by the tax dollars, but they can replenish it with money that is provided to them by whoever is utilizing these particular sources. I guess I'm trying to determine what is the source of this $27,000. It's not a transfer. And so I don't really understand. Like, where is this money stored, for example, that they're transferring it from?
No, I think what they mean is that they're getting payments from parents.
Yes, that's
Right.
what I assumed. So when the money comes in,
It should go into a special fund, and if they need to credit off expenses, if they run their expense through their operating budget, they need to credit it off to the operating budget. What would make more sense, and I'm sure they're looking to modify their procedures, is they should just expense it off to that separate fund and keep it away from their operating budget completely.
yes.
And we'll make that suggestion to
I completely
them.
agree. Yeah, because this I found completely perplexing.
Because it's
that-
not supported by the school at all that I'm aware of, right? I know it's connected physically to
Yeah,
the school,
yeah.
right? And there's some programs that, you know, are associated, but the dollar side, the parents that are paying, they're not being
Yeah.
subsidized by the town, right?
No,
Right.
not that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
That's why it should
But
just
there
be in a
is
separate fund.
a line item in the budget, right, 112Q, that they are reimbursing. So there is some commingling of budgeted expenditure and then this extra budgetary source of funding, right?
All I'm saying is they should not be charging the labor, say, off to that Q account that you're talking about, and it should be charged off to the same account that the revenue is going into. It's an off budget, it should stay off budget.
I agree. Okay. And the second item is line item 3300, professional and technical services, which is currently over budget due to unanticipated and unbudgeted in-district special education needs. In looking at this particular line item last year, it was budgeted at about $850,000. They expended about $1.4 million with another encumbrance of $81,000. So they actually spent about $1.4 million on this particular line item last year. So I don't know why it is budgeted at only 1.1 million this year. But it's not too surprising, given the spending last year, that this would be over budget. But I guess my question is, would this be specifically covered by excess cost, because it is specifically for special education needs?
I mean, everything is speculation, but excess cost sharing, which is they don't fund 100%.
No, I understand.
The numbers could have went from, you said from 800 to 1.4 million, and they're only now budgeting 1.1. It could have been, even assuming it's the same number of bodies involved, some could have been moved from outplacement back into the school system itself. Patrick, if you want to give them a lot of credit for one thing, they have brought kids with special needs back home to stay with their peers, which is a great thing. That may be the reason for the difference, but it's all speculation. You really need to talk to the Board of Ed, but if I had to guess, I would think it's something along those lines.
Okay. And then the third item is 410A electricity, which is over budget due to the unanticipated rise in electricity fees. Again, it is currently over budget due to the encumbrance. So if you look at this particular line item, they're currently, in terms of year-to-date actual, they're actually under budget, and they have an encumbrance of $339,000. So I think that certainly should get them through, certainly through the last day of school, which is June 9th, and hopefully through the remainder of this fiscal year. But I don't think it's quite the crisis of being at 102%, which is what the report says. Again, it's 102% only because it includes this encumbrance. And then lastly, the special ed transportation and tuition. Just to give everybody a little bit of historical context, when we were developing the budget a year ago, the superintendent presented this year's fiscal year budget gross of excess cost. And then the chairman actually said, no, that's not the way we do things. So he went back and he actually reduced the Board of Ed budget by $1.2 million. And half of that was his relatively conservative estimate of excess cost for this current fiscal year, which he estimated at that time to be $668,000. Back in February, just a couple months ago, we were informed by Christian that the district was informed in January that it is to receive $899,251. So in total for excess cost funding for this year. So about another $230,000 above what they thought it would be. But now we are receiving notification that the 3 separate installments of excess cost grant funding that are listed here total about $1.1 million. So that's a difference between what they expect to receive and what they budgeted of about $434,000. So that's a pretty big difference, and I think that's worthy of note. I am glad to see in the additional narrative that's provided that they have signed the contract with DATCO Transportation, and I'm hoping that parents and students in our school system will see improved services. And I'm also glad to see that they are anticipating utilizing this transportation for the extended school year program, or ESY, this coming summer. So that's all I have to say. Anybody else?
Thank you, Nancy. Other
Sure.
members have any comments on the Board of Ed?
Yes. Yeah, this Board of Ed financial narrative and report package here is somewhat disturbing. There are warnings in here. There's warnings about mentioning the budget freeze that they have. and the over expenditures that are necessary for in-district needs and electricity, and for what the superintendent has mentioned before. Yeah, so if we go to the report, the actual numbers, they're on page 1 of the printout here. The hospital insurance line, we'll get to that in a minute. It says it's 92% expended as of, is this February?
It's March.
March.
March. We got the March numbers in here, okay. But, of course, the professional service line is over by 209,000. The electric, we know that's at 36,000 in the red already, and we have some months left of the calendar. And the transportation lines on the following page, 510A and 510C. I'm not sure with those encumbrances if that carries them through to the end of the year, but those are at pretty much at the 100% level. The repair lines in the negative. And as usual, the tuition, is that prior to reimbursement from certain grant programs, that minus 872?
I think that was the comment on page 1 that Nancy was just referring to, Mike.
Yeah, okay. So, anyway, hopefully we'll get some clarification on that. Last month, I did ask a question about the pension payments that seem to have stopped at 610,000. That's line 201L on the first page of the report there. A $1.1 million item. Is that paid gradually throughout the year, or is that just done in some arbitrary fashion? Because it has 578,000 left in it.
So it's paid out through percentage of payroll, because they don't have Munis, they have an outside firm, and at the end of the year, they do a catch-up contribution, but that should be spent 100% by the end of the year.
If that's geared to labor payments, why wouldn't they have made a payment in the previous month? Why wouldn't they be showing? Are they taking their deductions monthly?
I think it's just catch-up that they have to do.
Yeah. Okay.
They just may not have hit their account yet.
All right.
But we've made it quite clear that line needs be expensed 100% by the end of the year.
Okay. All right. So let's talk here then about the hospital insurance line, 201B. Okay. And I really wanted to go to the insurance report that they provided later in the package here. It's about 5 pages from the end.
I mean, if it's their medical line, we're self-insured, the whole thing should be expensed.
Yeah. Well, all right. We've got to look at this a little bit. Because it's not making sense here. So somehow we have some of the lines filled in and some not. Is there a reason why there's no stop-loss reimbursement across the board? Or the claims paid, are they net payments after stop-loss?
I have no idea.
You have no
I don't know what
idea.
he's reporting, but it should be net.
They are?
It should
Or
be.
or you have no idea either?
I don't know.
No?
I don't know what he's reporting. I only look at his Munis reports.
Yeah. Well, so looking at the bottom line in this report here, total cash impact.
They don't show any stop-loss, though. Right, there's a separate line for it, Mike, right?
Yeah, they don't have.
There's a separate line.
Yeah, there is.
That's
There's nothing
blank.
shown there.
Nothing showing.
So is this a partial report or is this the full report?
I'll have to ask them.
Okay, let's look at the bottom line on that chart there, total cash impact. where, for the first month, for July, it was minus 204,000. Okay, then it's minus again in August, September, then it's basically even in October, and most of the months are negative. Now, don't use the April column here, because all it's showing is the employer contribution of $574,000. So don't include that. So if you take those numbers across the board, it's showing negative over what was budgeted, $1,592,000. If you add up all those negative per month figures.
I don't think I get your point, Mike.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the budget number.
What? Well, the 500, that's a good question. The employer contribution of $574,000 a month,
Right.
if that's multiplied by 12, that's $6.89 million. Now, that's below the total budget appropriation of $7.57 million, which may, of course, include some other fixed costs or expenses.
No, I think they reduced the number, so
Yeah, we'll have to.
Yeah, I mean, if they straight lined it, Mike, it would be 631, not 574.
Right. But, again, that could be contribution to claims outside of fixed costs. So the remainder might be Anthem costs, might be stop-loss costs, possibly. Does that make any sense to you, Mr. Monaco?
I don't understand his report.
Exactly. So, if it is...
I cannot believe that the Board of Ed stop-loss didn't kick in.
Right.
So, and he's not showing any revenue from stop-loss. So, I just think
Right.
it's not complete, his report.
So, but what I'm looking at here is, if you add up the total cash impact, and it is 1.59 million in the red, that corresponds somewhat to the one-page letter we received to the question that Nancy had about the usage of the reserve account. This note from Christian said that the reserve account has seen an overall loss at the end of March of 1.02 million, 1 million. All right, but previous to that, he also said that the reserve account has seen a year-to-date activity of minus $591,000. So if you add those two figures together, I don't know if this makes any sense, maybe it's totally wrong. If you add those two figures together, that comes up pretty much close to what the cash impact is in the report that they gave us, minus $1.59 million. Should we ask if there's anyone from the Board of Ed here who can step up to the microphone and help us?
All right, I think, Mike, you have made a lot of valid points here. I think, and Nancy's, of course, had some comments or questions, I should say, about the Board of Ed reports. I think we've all had a lot of questions about some of the Board of Ed reports all year, and you're certainly pointing out another one here.
Well, Tim, you and I are on the workshop for this subject matter, and I just hope that we can get clarification at some point very soon.
So Ingrid, why don't we ask about this particular report, and let's start by asking if this is a report that's provided by
Brown and Brown.
Brown and Brown, or if Christian's actually generating this on his own. I'm guessing he's going to tell us it's Brown and Brown. That's my guess.
No, it's not.
Do you think it's
He has to be generating this. The report that you've seen that I gave you from the town side.
That's Brown and Brown?
That's a Brown and Brown
Okay.
generated report.
All right, so
So I think he's extrapolating from Brown and Brown and Munis, but we'll ask him to explain stop loss. Is there something else besides stop loss, or what his projections are?
The most nervous thing about this is that for next fiscal year, I believe Board of Ed did not put in any increase on the medical insurance line.
They didn't.
They didn't, if
They did not.
Okay.
So I like to assume that's what the actuaries gave him, but we'll expand the conversation.
Okay. If there's a revised report, just send us the revised report.
Sure.
Thanks.
But would it be helpful if you and the other members of this group that meets with Brown and Brown also includes Christian?
We
Well,
haven't met in a
they
while.
We don't
always
deal
have.
with the Board of Ed side.
They've always come. They've always
Rich is saying the opposite.
participated.
They-
We don't-
they-
When we meet, they're with us. They're in the room.
They meet with them.
No, they may meet
Yeah.
with you,
Yeah.
but what we get from Brown and Brown is strictly town side. We don't
Yeah.
get information from the Board of Ed.
Right, but I'm just saying, if the workshop ever, like,
Oh.
we met last year, that was sort of a brief informational thing. But when we met previously with our agents, the Board of Ed reps are there,
Yes.
yeah, so.
I just
yeah.
think it would be useful
Well,
to
it's the
have
same- it's the
everyone
same
in the
reps.
same room.
Yes.
Right. And just one more point, again, just stepping back and looking from the 30,000-foot view, if you flip to the last page of the Board of Ed budget, this represents 9 months into the year, so 9 out of 12 months is 75%, and the Board of Ed budget to date is expended at 74.7%, and that includes about $4.8 million in encumbrances. If you were to remove that $4.8 million in encumbrances, they'd be at 67.2. So I absolutely appreciate all of the points that you're making, that there's lots of potential for some things that aren't represented in this budget that could be definitely tipping the scales, but in terms of the bottom line, bottom right side, that seems to be right on target with what's budgeted. Tim, if I could, unless anybody has any other comments about Board of Ed, if I could just make one quick question about, back to the revenue portion, if that's.
Townside revenue?
Townside revenue, yes.
Sure, go ahead.
So, again, I appreciate this note from Quinnipiac University stating their intended usage for their voluntary payment. And again, their interest in supporting various infrastructure upgrades in our town. I just had one question. When they made the announcement about the $300,000 back last summer, I think it was either late July or early August, they actually made, the former Quinnipiac president made a statement that this would be the first of 2 payments to North Haven. And between then and the end of fiscal year 2025. So I just wondered, do we have any input about this for the current fiscal year? Should we be expecting
I don't think we
anything?
should be expecting anything from
I
Quinnipiac
don't
in
think
this
we're gonna-
current fiscal year.
Right.
I think Mike has mentioned that a couple times at the meeting.
Well,
hasn't he?
again, they made this announcement, so I'm just trying to follow up on their own words.
I think they would have a prerogative to cancel that if they wanted to.
Of
It's
course,
a voluntary
of course.
donation, so.
Of course, it is
If they're not
absolutely
happy
valid.
with comments that have been made towards them, they're not going to send us any more money, so.
Right, but again, if they're willing to support various infrastructure upgrades, then, perhaps they might in the subsequent year. So I'm trying to get a sense both for this year as well as for next year, whether this is potentially a source of funding, not just for extra budgetary projects, but perhaps for something that's actually on our capital budget.
Honestly,
wouldn't
I don't
count
think
on
we
it.
should count
I
on
wouldn't
it.
count
If
on it
it
at
comes,
all.
it's a nice gift, and that's how we should look at it, and not expect it to be here.
Okay,
I'll take a motion on the reports.
Make a motion.
Second, please.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
I'm going to say no.
Mr. Hallahan's opposed.
Because the Board of Ed was one of those reports, and I didn't like it.
Good for you.
So noted, Mr. Hallahan.
Okay.
Okay. We've come to the portion of the meeting where we need to finalize the budget for town budget meeting on May 12th. Just one point of note, although the members know this. After our March meeting, it came to our attention there was a slight adjustment needed. There was a number missing on page 32 under maintenance overtime. I believe it was previously zero. It should have been $12,300. So the revised budget we have in front of us does have that number, and I'm told that the totals in the report include that number. So when we get to the resolutions, of course, even if we do nothing, there'll be a slight change from our last meeting. Having said that, I think we're at the annual budget town meeting. Happy to open up to any kind of conversation the members would like to have.
Tim, are we going in some special order, or
No? Go right ahead.
to anyone that would like to speak? So first of all, I'd like to thank all of the people that turned out for the budget public hearing. It was a nice 4-hour meeting, but I think it is extremely important that we, on this Board of Finance, hear from the public. And I appreciated all of the people that took the time to actually express their opinions and preferences, and I think that certainly we heard from a lot of people about the education budget, and a lot of people said that they were interested in supporting both the education budget as well as adding additional firefighters. But I don't believe that we actually had a discussion on this board about the addition of firefighters. So I would be interested in hearing from my fellow colleagues on the board their opinions about adding firefighters.
Why don't we start with your opinion and let the other members comment after that if they so choose.
So as I said at the meeting, I felt that it was, from a procedural standpoint, it was inappropriate that the requested 4 firefighters were cut from the budget before the workshop and before we could even discuss it. So I've made my feelings on procedurally pretty clear.
Well, I think I made my feelings clear at the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
All the department heads work not for this board, they work for Mr. Frieda.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, Mr. Frieda has a lot of say in what goes into the budget that's submitted to this board. I don't know, and maybe the other board members here do or don't know, but there may have been some other requests that other town department heads had asked that Mike did not want to submit into the budget. Paul made it clear that he believes we need additional firefighters. And by the way, he's made that request, as you know, for numerous years. So it didn't make it into the budget. We can talk about it if you like, and we are, I guess. But my view is Mike is the executive leader of this town, and that includes the fact that he is the department heads report to him, and therefore he has the prerogative to submit the budget he feels is in the best interest of the town.
But we on this board are responsible for generating the budget that was presented to the public at the public hearing. This
Okay.
board, not Mr. Frieda.
Okay,
this
so
board.
if that were the case, and it is, I guess, and we're
Yes.
having the conversation now, we could have, on our own, said we think we need 4 firefighters, and we could have added them to the budget back in March.
I believe back in March, Tim, you said that Chief Janiszewski did not ask for them.
You just said we're responsible to
So.
send in the budget to the town.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, if this board as a group felt strongly about adding for firefighters or any other expenses down, we could have added it to the budget. So yes, once the budget gets to this board, ultimately, we have a say until obviously it gets to the referendum when the voters of the town get to decide what we're going to spend. So I guess my view is we can change the budget using our normal processes, which means if Mr. Frida submitted it without 4 firefighters, let's just say the 7 of us believe strongly we should have the 4 firefighters, we could have added them.
So
And I
guess-
suppose we could add them right now, by the
That's what I'm
way.
asking is, could I hear from everyone on this board as to whether they want, at this point, to consider adding 4 firefighters to the budget or not?
Well, I'm happy to start then.
Sure.
There's 2.5 positions in this budget, to the best of my knowledge. 2 on the Board of Ed side, a half position on the town side. I think there was a lot of conversation about the increase. There was certainly a lot of conversation about the impact that revaluation is going to have on all the residents of the town, and how it's going to disproportionately affect the residential homeowners, just because of the way the values moved up higher in relation to the commercial side of business. Mr. Criscola got up there and talked about the fact that, adding 2 or 3 firefighters, in his opinion anyways, isn't helpful. You need to add 4 plus all the equipment that goes along with it, and perhaps even an engine. Granted, that's one view out of some, but he's a former member of the Fire Commission. I don't know exactly what that would cost, but I'm guessing 4 firefighters, when you include the training, the equipment, and let's leave the engine out for a minute. I'm guessing that's, I don't know, $700,000? So, I think my opinion right now is, while I think long-term we may need to add firefighters in the town, I'm not comfortable personally adding it to this particular budget. And I'd welcome comments from the other members.
I agree with what you said, Tim. Maybe down the road, we can look at that, but I don't know how we could possibly squeak out the money out of this budget, because we would have to cut something else. And really, the other departments are working so hard to not bring any new people in, except for the half police officer that we need.
I agree too, Tim. I'm comfortable with the budget, and I don't know how we could come up with the extra funds.
All right, thank you. Anyone else have comments on this topic, or Michael, something you'd like to add?
I think we all support safety, the safety services in this town, and that includes the fire department, fire and medical. And I would like to see all the shifts be at 11 instead of 2 shifts that are at 10 right now, when they have a minimum required staff of 10. The 11th person would not cost quite as much as adding, say, a 12th or a 13th. But I have no right to ask for too much more in this budget, because I'm having a hard time supporting it as it is. I mean, to me, when people are receiving the tax bills that they are, for me to ask anything significant to be added would be irresponsible, and I can't do that at this time. But that need remains, and we should address it in the future. And I think we are sympathetic to the needs and the concerns of everyone who's expressed these opinions to us through letters and at the town meeting, and really on a constant basis. So, the words of Jen Caldwell, the words of Mary White, the words that have been said to us, they express some of the deep-seated concerns that, that many people have in this town. And they want us to continue to support our safety services in any way we can. This year, with the revaluation, is not, I don't think it's a year we can accommodate that. Now, I'm not even sure we can accommodate the one half police officer that's in here. But we'll address some of this stuff later in May. I have a feeling we're going to address it again. That's a feeling. We'll see what happens.
Thank you, Mike. All right, other comments on the budget?
Again, just related to the fire department, I'm sure everyone is aware of the fire that took place in the middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning last night. And I was very happy to see that Engine 1 and Engine 2, as well as Volunteer Engine 6, was able to respond within minutes. And that we had another volunteer engine at Northeast that was standing by at the station. So we had both career firefighters as well as volunteer firefighters working side by side in service of this town, and they were able to do so despite another medical emergency across town, and so the career firefighters were able to respond to that as well. So I think this is kind of proof positive that they are able to respond, and I think the comments that volunteer firefighters aren't available to respond to fires is just patently false, and that I greatly appreciate the services of both our career firefighters and our volunteers.
I think the challenge that we've had is that last year, the budget failed. So there had to be cuts made. And we listened, and knowing what the economy's going, groceries and all that, this was hard to do, but we tried really hard to keep expenses down because we listened last year when it failed. So it's a challenge. I'm not saying I'm not for firefighters. I think during a reval year, it's a challenge. And we're hoping that this passes, and Mr. Frieda was up front telling us at the meeting, this is what's going to be cut. And if the citizens can't afford it, this is it. Usually what happens if it fails, then there's some talk, but he outlined specifically. And I think that's the challenge. It's a reval year, things are going up, and everybody's feeling it. And I think this isn't the year, but personally I'm not against it. There's a lot of things that we could not do with the way things are right now. That's my opinion.
All right, thank you, Diane.
So I think the challenge of this particular budget is not just that the assessments of homeowners' assessment values went up 30 to 40%, and that the proposed mill rate is about 15% lower, but the combination of the two and this particular set of expenditures has led to a tax levy that is a little bit over 9% higher than the amount of taxes that we needed to raise for the current budget. So it's not enough to just see, oh, it's a 7% increase overall. I think you really have to look at the burden that is being placed on the taxpayers, the homeowners, as opposed to the business owners here in our town. And again, while I appreciated all of the people that took the time to be there at that meeting, I was also very cognizant of the people that could not be there, in particular the senior citizens that either don't drive or don't drive at night, as well as those individuals who are really living paycheck to paycheck, and they couldn't be at that meeting because they were working their second or sometimes third job in order to put food on the table and support their families. So I think that we certainly have a responsibility to to serve their needs as well. So I have some questions that I'd like to ask on the expenditure side, and I have some suggested potential changes for, suggested questions about the expenses and suggestions for potentially boosting the revenue side of the budget. So I'll leave it up to you, Mr. Chairman, as to how you want to start.
Let's just see if there's any other general
Sure,
comments
of
first
course.
before we get to some specifics. Michael, do you have a comment?
No, I'm going to save some of my comments for when it's voting time.
Okay,
So, it's all right.
all right, then why don't you go through with the expense questions you have, Nancy?
Sure. Again, in terms of looking at the biggest, not necessarily departments, but categories of our expenditure budget, if you were to classify them from, largest, let's say the top 6 largest, it would be Board of Ed at 68 million. Number 2, interestingly enough, is insurance at 10.7 million. Number 3 is debt at 10.5 million. Police at 9.7 million. Pension at 9 million. And fire at about 7.2 million. So again, they each increased by varying amounts, but I think having an awareness of our insurance being the second largest department or category, and it increased by 14%, as well as our pensions also being up there, is also an indication of our the cost associated with hiring people, and not just this year and next year, but in the last several years. As I've said many times, it's the most expensive thing that we can do, is hire individuals, because not only their salaries increase, but the cost of their benefits as well. But I did want to ask, is there any wiggle room on, I believe it's page 36 of our budget book, in insurance, and on page 35 in actuarial expense? And I say this just based upon our expenditures to date in the current fiscal year.
Why don't we start at page 35?
Sure. Under pension and social security, about almost all the way down, actuarial expense.
Right. That's for the
Yeah.
pension plans, I'm
The
assuming.
pension
don't we
plans,
do
there's
2
GASB reports that Siegel generates
Right.
for the auditors. That's what they charge us.
But I'm assuming it's I didn't look at the expense, but I'm assuming it's a relatively lumpy item, right? In terms of, it's,
Yeah, I mean, there's a multitude of things that fall into the actuary expenses. They do the pension projections
right,
every year, depending if, one year they may do town and police, next year do fire.
right, yeah, you got it.
And the other thing is they do all the GASB calculations for the auditors every year. And anyone that's retiring, they verify the pension calculations.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the actual expense in 23-24 was about $61,000, and we're budgeting $165,000. So the 165 is a 10% increase over the current budget, which is 150, and
There are
it's substantially
new
higher.
GASB reports that are required, and we are revamping all the pension plans to be more current with IRS codes. And the actuaries are the ones that have the lawyers that do those type of plans. And as far as medical, those are numbers, that's the same thing. The actuaries' projections based on our law funds tell us to carry. So it's like your homeowner's policy. You can't call up your insurance agent and say, I don't like what I'm paying for insurance on my house or my car, I'm going to give you less.
Right.
It doesn't work like that.
But again, we have two different line items in our budget for actuarial expense. One comes under pension and social security, and that's budgeted at 150, and we've only
Yep.
spent 85. And then the other one is actuarial GASB, and that falls under insurance, and that's only a $15,000 expense, and we've spent about 10. So, as you know, this is a slightly different setup for the expenditure reports than it is for the budget booklet. But again, given that the actuarial expense is only about 57% spent this year, I wondered if there was some room for savings there.
We're still in the-
Yeah, we're still in audit. That GASB number is going to be going up. And I said, we're still in the process of reworking the plans.
Okay, because
Can you
there was nothing spent
Yeah.
last month,
Yeah.
not $1.
No, they're still working on it. They haven't billed us. The auditor doesn't bill us all the time.
I see.
Is that,
Full typing.
and we can actually tell you where we are right now.
This is, yeah. Well, this is accurate. This is
And
accurate.
also on page 36, again, I know that the insurance was something that was a great concern last year because we were over, and still remains to be seen where we are this year, as Mr. Hallahan pointed out. But I just wondered, is there any wiggle room in this either?
Let me, maybe I can put it in a different frame for you so you can follow. The number that you see being carried for medical is a number we're being told to carry for medical based on what the actuaries' recommendations are, based on our loss runs. Could we budget less? Why would you budget less than they tell you should expect to pay? Now, in reality, we will expend that full amount, and we will pay expenses out of that separate fund for medical.
Right, but,
And that's, we pay everything out of it. We pay the actual fees because we're self-insured. We pay the stop-loss policy out of there because that adds our insurance if we have a catastrophic illness. And there are several in the town that hit stop-loss. Actually, in this year, stop-loss went up 24%. You know, if you look at medical went up 11%. Well, part of what makes up that medical is our stop-loss policy, which went up 24%. It's still averaged out to 11 because our claim history has been very good the last 12 months.
right, so it's
So it did
typically a
not jump, but again,
13-month look
costs
at
of
that.
prescriptions still go up, doctor's fees still go up.
Right.
Even though our exposure's been good, been better, tracking in a more positive direction for us, there's a natural increase in expenses. And those are numbers that are given. We don't pull the number out of the sky.
Right, but
Someone
we
does a
certainly have had
calculation.
many years in which Mike Frieda has come to the table in the 12th hour and been able to say, oh, based upon the 13-month look
Well,
back. we
That's
can
exactly
have
what happens.
That's true,
Yes,
but he's doing that based on the fact that another month has gone by.
yes,
And it's...
that's why I'm asking.
But if you look at the raw report you were giving, we're tracking in a positive direction. We're already in April. March was our last numbers, and we tracked it consistently. Actually, March, and as Mr. Hallahan said, I think it kind of matched the February one matched the previous February one, get a few dollars. There wasn't a big change in it. So there was no heavy month falling off and a short month coming in. So the actuary numbers that they gave us stand from March and April numbers didn't change for us.
The other issue, Nancy, is that, you know, when we started these plans, there were no reserves. We're building a little bit of reserves now. I'm told the workman's comp isn't a negative position. And this is not workman's comp, I grant you that, right? But in some regards, you can look at them together, right? I mean, you don't want to be too skinny on this item because we have to have some reserves.
Absolutely.
And on the other side of the table, we already know we got a big hole in the workman's comp. I'm not sure if it's an actual fund, but
Yeah, no,
It is a fund.
it is, it's
Okay.
a fund.
right.
You have to be disciplined to put what the experts, based on your history, tell you to put in. When you start not following their advice and saying, well, we're going to save something, it comes back to bite you hard sometimes.
Right, like the OPEB, right?
Well, LPEP
Right.
is funding for medical liability.
No, I
So
understand,
that's-
I understand, but we didn't fund it for several years, and it came back to actually bite us in the...
No, actually, it wasn't a major
Not-
factor of us
right.
losing a rating, if that's what you're
Right,
talking about.
that's not it.
Well, it was one of the things that was
The
listed.
major rating was our fund
It
balance.
was our fund balance. Right.
OPEB, Michael could deal with. It's the fund balance which was the problem.
I see. Okay, so are there any items under, on page 36, under miscellaneous, that could actually be in any way modified? I was thinking, again, it's not a big number, but...
None of those on that page are big numbers at all.
They're all
yeah,
small, they're all
none
tiny
of them are
numbers.
big numbers, I agree.
I mean, in reality, community TV, and I think I mentioned it to Tim, he actually asked for an increase of more because he's losing dollars from Comcast and those, the way they get reimbursed from the state, his numbers are dropping. And while we boosted him $3,000, he was hoping that we could boost him another $9,000. And I just didn't.
I suspect when you look at the titles here, and Richie may be able to confirm, a lot of these have got to be dues.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was.
Medcon,
Give or take.
CCM, Connecticut Council, small towns, I mean, the dollars are small, but these got to be all just dues payments we're
Dues,
paying.
yes.
Annual,
Right.
Yeah, and the increase is 2% overall.
okay, so on page 25, under personnel policy expenses, as I mentioned before, the labor negotiations, the actual in '23-24 was about $3,000. We've spent very little this year, and as Mr. Monaco pointed out, we really only have one more CBA to negotiate, so I wondered if this number might be reduced.
Which item you talking about on this page?
Sorry,
Negotiations.
under personnel policy expenses, third to last, labor negotiations.
That just came up in the expense discussion. You just
Yeah, I
mentioned
did.
that.
Yep, that's what we're talking about, is
I do
expenses.
the contract, I negotiate the contract
Yes.
for the way.
But now we're talking about next year. So
Well, there's still, but
during our
there's
discussion, it was this year.
there's
Right.
other labor negotiations that go on besides contract.
I would point this out as well. We're fortunate to have somebody who works for us now that has a lot of experience in this area. Heretofore, the negotiations were always handled by the town attorney.
Yes.
And I'm guessing that's probably typical for most towns.
Yeah,
Yes.
So,
Yes, so we can save an expenditure as a result of both Mr. Monaco's contributions and the fact that we have very few CBAs ahead of us, correct? Or other things to
and there
negotiate.
are other grievances, other labor things that come up that the lawyer does handle.
Well,
If
as-
they grieve something in police or public works, the lawyer's involved. I can't go into specifics, but we've had meetings with attorneys from different labor unions related to disciplinary actions. The lawyer's present for those. If someone is separated from the town, the lawyer is present for those. Those are all part of labor costs associated with legal.
But as I said, we haven't been utilizing
Well,
it. So not last
But
year,
it's,
not
we
this
have
year.
done some, and you can't just wipe a line out and something happens. Where do we fund it from?
Let's see, labor negotiations, we have spent $4,700 to date. And the year before that, it was $3,188. So there may be more bills coming, certainly, for the remainder of this year, but I just thought this was a line item that perhaps we could save $40,000 or something like that. Or
I guess my reaction to that one, Nancy, is that we'll hope that Rich stays healthy or doesn't quit the town.
Yep.
But that might be one that is ripe for adjustment if the budget doesn't pass. I mean, $40,000 is real money, but it's not going to move the needle truthfully on a budget this size.
Okay. All right, well, that's what I have on the expenditure side of things. As I said, I think it's important to think about both sides of the ledger. And so we have to be thinking about the revenue side. as well.
So before you go into the revenue, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Just a reminder to those in attendance and those who might be listening at home, our role tonight is to pass the expense side of the budget, but of course, we all know there's a revenue side, there's an expense side, and where those two meet is the mill rate that gets passed. So I'm happy to talk about it, but that will ultimately be decided in May.
Sure. So my first suggestion is the very top of page 7, which is our list of the income budget, and that is the appropriation from the fund balance. In the current fiscal year, we have $500,000 appropriated, and proposed for the next budget, we have 0. And so I thought that this might be a smart thing to do, again, to take that money off of the backs of the taxpayers, and that it is still a decision to be made once we get to the end of the year as to whether we actually need to make that transfer or not. But I think including it in the budget is something that we have done, and I don't think we should bring that down to 0. Any thoughts?
I do have thoughts, but why don't we go through all of them if you don't mind first?
Sure, of course. Let's see. My next point was, again, given the conversations that we've had about the revenue budget, I'm sorry, the potential for people to not be able to pay their taxes in full, that will result in not only late fees, but also interest payments and liens. So I thought that an expectation of increased revenue from that associated with delinquent collections, increasing it from the $600,000 that we budgeted to $900,000, and I have to say currently this particular revenue line item is at $818,000, so it's really not out of line with the current fiscal year budget.
Sorry, was it 300, Nancy? What was it?
300 extra. Yep, 600 to 900, which would be an additional 300. I have several, concrete numbers and then a few questions based upon whether there's any intelligence that's been provided from the state level. So let me just go through the concrete numbers. Interest on short-term investments increased from $850,000 to $1,250,000. We're currently at $1.5 million, as I said, so that's an increase of $400,000. Let's see. I have been noticing a trend in the Registrar of Vital Statistics that we've been seeing an uptick there for whatever reason, and so I thought just a small increase from $40,000 to $60,000, that would just be $20,000 increase. Our communities, currently it's at $41.3 thousand, so again, with 3 months left in the year. Community services fees, I thought increasing that from $200,000 to $240,000, so just a $40,000 increase. And also supplemental auto, increasing that from $1.2 million to $1.35, and that's an increase of $150,000. And then I had 2 questions. One was the education cost-sharing grant. That's money from the state that goes directly to the town to support our abilities to pay for the education budget. We're using a smaller number than the current fiscal year, and it seems as though there are a few numbers in our page 7 that are in a slightly lighter font. I'm not sure why it's printed that way, but I'm just wondering, do we have any up-to-date information that ECS money will be lower, higher, same?
The numbers that are carried in are the governor's budget request. We have nothing beyond that right now. And I would be shocked if we've seen something before May, even before May, if any final numbers.
Okay.
As far as, just let me respond to a few of the things you mentioned.
Yeah.
The town clerk fees, those are actually trending down, not up. And a lot of them is because it's ties to interest rates. So in reality, with interest rates being where they are, her fees are down. And if you look, she'll probably, right now, I think she's tracking, what, 400,000 less than was budgeted for '25. And we, in this budget, geared that number down a little bit because of that. And same thing with interest rates. Yes, it's a combination of why we generated more in interest. Part of it is cash management, the way we handle the accounts. The other part of it is, interest rates, we negotiated some nice rates. But the markets are coming down. Those numbers will be coming down. And in reality, if you look at our current budget, the fact that we've generated more than we budgeted is going to make up, at least for Quinnipiac shortfall, maybe the registrar's or town clerk shortfalls. So if you push everything to the max and cut everything to the minimum, and not be realistic in where you think the numbers are, just like the perfect one was town clerk fees. Those are, unless interest rates get really low, I don't expect that number to trend positively. And I don't think interest rates are going to get low enough for it to trend positively in the near future. So I know tonight isn't a night, it's really expense side. But some of the suggestions for revenue like that, and it may be, we look at the current budget and some of the numbers are tight. Stacy's numbers are tight in tax collection. As we said, building fees are tracking, well behind where they should be.
36%.
When things change drastically, I have the ability to really manipulate my expenses. I can not buy things. I can forgo things if I had to. Sometimes that's not a good thing, and it ends up costing us more in the long run. But in the short term, but revenue, if we come up short revenue, there's no way for me to make it up. We don't print money downstairs. It'd be nice if we printed money downstairs, but we don't print money downstairs. So you have to be reasonable and at least semi-conservative on your estimations. And the problem is there's items that happen outside our control on the national level, even on the local level, that change our ability sometimes to generate income. And Tim knows it more than anything in the banking industry. So I would just be cautious on what you do with revenue numbers.
Yeah, all the more reason that I think we should put that fund balance transfer in there as a stopgap measure, rather than keep it zero. Because if the other sources of revenue don't pan out, that's not in there then, right? But if they do, and we wind up being in, a nice cushy surplus, then we don't.
It's a decision for it. What I was talking about is the interest, the town revenues from clerk fees, building fees. You even mentioned interest, taxes are higher, less people are going to pay. Maybe we should increase our interest and such for Stacy. Well, in reality, those numbers really aren't going to change. If someone's not going to pay you in July, do you think, later on in the year they're going to be able to pay you? If they're having that tough of a time, it's usually beyond a year. Some of those interests are from years past that people are catching up with their taxes. And a lot of times it's because the houses are being sold.
And that winds up being arrears, correct?
That becomes in the arrears, which
Right,
is
so it's a
with the
different
interest
category.
in the interest and liens.
Right, so that's.
There's arrear taxes, but the interest is on the rear property. And those, we're talking about, years past. It's what's happening currently really doesn't hit that line. It's unrealistic to think it would
I
hit
might
that.
add that, to the best of my knowledge, Nancy, historically, the town, when we've had residents go past due on their taxes, has tried to be accommodating and come to payment plans with them. The last thing that historically we wanted to do is have to foreclose on a resident, who oftentimes, by the way, are either seniors or perhaps someone who's had a life circumstance which has impacted their well-being and perhaps their economic well-being. I think to Rich's last point, I mean, I think I would say as a general rule, if the economy softens and if people are faced with significantly higher taxes because of a reval, I would expect collections to worsen, not get better, which, as we said earlier, maybe I said it, was, we should think about the collection rate we've got in this budget as well. And I think Richie's right. If we had a resident who was past due, truthfully, I think we'd work with them. But even if you didn't, you wanted to foreclose on them, Connecticut's one of the longest states in the country for foreclosures. You're not going to get your money for a long time. And it's, at that point, it's not a recurring revenue, right? It's going to be something lumpy that you're going to get in some big bunch perhaps when you get to a conclusion. I think with respect to some of the other items, the fund balance most specifically, when you mention it, what went through my mind as well, that may or may not be something we want to put in here, but we don't have to do it till May. And we just heard earlier that the town side for 2024 has been done. They hope to wrap up the education side shortly, and that we may actually get a CAFR soon. I'd kind of like to know how we wrapped up last year before we start taking more fund balance out for next year.
I would love that, yeah.
Yeah.
But
So-
we can't, so here we are.
Well, no, my point is, we don't have to do this. This is conversation right now. And we don't have to make any changes to the revenue side till May when we set the mill rate.
Okay, and, well, but again, going back to the interest on short-term investments, we have it budgeted at 850. Is there some number, Rich, that you're comfortable with? Because we're currently at almost 1.5 million. If you kind of straight line that, it would be closer to 2 million by the end of this year. So is there some number greater than 850 that you would be comfortable with? I had suggested 1.25. What would you be more comfortable with? I don't know. You tell me.
I don't think we have to have an answer right now. I think I'm happy to ask that the finance department look into that, and if there's a revised number that they'd recommend, we'll bring it forth. Look at the revenues for this year. This is one of those years, and there's always differences and variances in these line items, right? It happens to be one of those years where, we've got some line items that are doing very well, and you just mentioned one of them, short-term interest on investments, right? And some other line items that are doing not so well at all. Building fees, fire fees, QU money. We've got some other areas here where we're not doing quite as well.
Bless you.
Thank you.
By the way, I won't even go through the math, but truthfully, Nancy, when I was looking at this revenue report today, I tried to look at where we were at the end of this. On the second page here, it says that the available budget is $8,723,553. I tried to come up with what I thought was an estimate of where we might end the year. To be honest with you, my math, which may not be right because there's 3 months to go, tells me we could be $500,000 short on revenue. Could be more, could be less. It's my own math, but I think if you ask Richie right now, he'd probably tell you he thinks we may run a little short too.
But that's typically, I should say typically, in the last 5 or 6 years, we've had a revenue shortfall just about every year, at least on the town side.
Well, that unfortunately runs counter to the argument you're making to raise some of these budget items.
Right. Again, but it's compensated for by under expenditure. So.
Well, wait a minute. You can't say we ran under on revenues in the last couple of years.
Yes, we have. We've had revenue
I know, but then
shortfalls.
you just said it gets compensated by under expenditure. It obviously
Yes.
didn't. Oh, under expenditures. I'm
Under
sorry. I thought you
expenditure,
said,
so
okay.
that's how you
Yes,
end
it
up
did. It did.
with a
Right.
surplus. Yeah.
Yes.
And the other thing to keep in mind is, again, the difference between a 34.64 mill rate versus with the old assessed values versus a 29.46 mill rate with the new assessed values. Again, as I mentioned, the mill rate is only coming down 15%, but the assessed values are going up 30 to 40%. So the point of that is relatively small changes in the mill rate given the magnitude of the increased base, which is your assessed value, can actually make a really big difference on an individual taxpayer level. So I know we normally shoot for trying to make differences of, a mil or more if we are in the position where we have to make a change, but I think that might not be the case, again, given the total basis that individual taxpayers are facing. And one other question, again, in terms of intelligence from the state level, MRSA, again, we're budgeting the exact same amount as this year. Do we have any?
That's what the
input?
governor's budget
That's the governor's
reflects.
budget as well. Again,
Which I think, by the way, is the highlights, right? Now you're reminding me.
Yeah,
The reason you
that's
see them
right,
light is
because
because
they're
that's
not
what that
fixed
was.
right, but
Yeah, they're not.
I asked because, for example, I was able to look up, and our LoCIP amount went up, at least according to the governor's budget.
LoCIP's off budget.
So I understand that, but I'm just asking, that's why I'm asking whether some of these other numbers also
And
were.
I don't remember which two, but was it ECS went down and MRSA, one of them went up about the same amount and netted out the same dollars.
Mhm,
Just called it something different.
right. So are we not willing to consider any of these revenue changes that I'm proposing? Or do you want to wait to see what happens with the referendum?
Well, let's start with
Not
the other
quite sure.
members and see if they've got any comments on the income
Sure.
side, since,
I think we do what you
Yeah.
asked the finance department to do, just to go back and take a look at things and come back to us, because we're not gonna change
Yeah.
this till May. so.
And as I said, if I'm not, maybe I'm wrong, I think what you said was totally correct, that you're voting on the expense side of the budget. And when you set the mill rate is when revenue really gets locked down. Maybe we'll have better numbers from the state by then, too.
Rich, the interest and liens number, which is the first number that Nancy added, that's from Stacy's
That's
office?
Stacy's, yeah.
Right,
So
okay,
that's rare taxes and such.
right. So fund balance, we know what that is. Interest and short-term investments, we mentioned. Registrar of Vital Stats, whose department is that? That's town clerk again?
No,
Town clerk fees.
All right. Community services, community services. Supplemental auto, I guess I don't know how to analyze the increase you're suggesting.
I would stay away from auto because we know the state redid the entire formula. It's straight line now, so even the supplemental probably would be, if somebody's buying a used car, remember, it used to be by market value, now they straight line depreciated based on the age. So all those vehicles went down.
Well, we had a big drop in personal property. That's where it is,
Personal
right?
property
Right.
goes down because we dropped the mill rate over 5 mils. So between auto and.
But the assessed value went down too quite a bit, right?
Yes.
Bit.
Yeah, it normally
A bit.
drops 10. And then the fact that we dropped 5 mils, there's no reval on their value, it actually goes down 10.
I guess what I'm saying is, on the grand list, I can find it. I think it went down 19%, didn't it?
Yeah, probably.
Let's see, residential property went up 56.6%.
He's talking about auto.
I
16?
understand. Commercial, 18, industrial, 5.9, personal property, 13, and registered motor vehicles went up 6.3%
Okay.
on the grand list.
No.
That doesn't seem
No.
right.
What do you
You're
mean, no?
misreading the numbers.
Yeah, that doesn't seem right.
What do you mean I'm misreading the numbers?
That-
I'm looking at them.
No. That's 6.3%, that last number you had.
Oh, that's the percentage of.
Percentage of the
Gotcha.
overall-
Oh, yeah. The change, my mistake. So it went down by 14%, my mistake. Personal property went up by 7.5, industrial went up by 50%, commercial real property went up by 29%, and residential real property went up by 37.5%.
14%.
So again, to the point that was made earlier,
So supplemental auto, if it follows trend, it's going to go down 14%.
Right.
That's what I was getting at.
That's right.
It's not
So-
going up.
I'm nervous about that line and the town clerk fees line. being
Building fees.
overestimated.
Building fees.
Yeah.
Overestimated as well.
Yeah.
but again, it will still be at the difference between the capped level of the auto tax and this proposed mill rate
No.
is much smaller change than it would be from
The state
the 34.6.
completely changed the way it values
Complete
cars.
change
No.
to the basis
Yeah.
of valuing automobiles. It's a big legislative change that they made.
Mhm.
So
It changed the entire
so
procedure.
it changed the entire grand list.
Mhm.
It's
So
nothing like
I
it
would-
was.
I would have dropped the supplemental number, but.
Yeah,
so-
but I think
So
we
I'm saying
flatlined it, but.
For all the points that Nancy's making that seem correct in a way, they are offset by some of the concerns we still have about some of the other numbers in this revenue budget that may be overestimates or rosy estimates of some revenue. So I would leave it alone for now and revisit this in May if necessary.
And I'm happy to ask,
I would leave it alone, too.
But once we revisit all of her points, or valid points, I think we could address those at that time. But we should leave that as a relief valve in case of emergency. It's like a fire alarm on the wall.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Pull it
supplemental
when
auto is
necessary.
$1.2 million, based on the reasoning you just put, it should be dropped by 180,000. So
Yeah.
it should go from $1.2 million to like $1 million. So there's 200,000. Well, we left it where it was, so in a zero-sum game, interest went up 200,000, because I have to make up for the shortfall in auto. They're
Yeah.
best guess estimates, some of the numbers.
Yeah.
And they need to, it's give and take. Right now, building is tracking, what, 900,000 behind?
900,000.
$900,000 behind. We have 2 months left of the year. You think they're gonna hit their $1 million?
Town clerk, 400,000.
Town clerk, minus 400,000.
And fire
Fire,
fees,
362. 362. There's only a few months left.
Mhm.
So you can't push everything to the extreme and hope for the best. But again, it's not something you have to deal with till you're setting the mill rate.
if the members think it's necessary, we could recess for 10 minutes and caucus, otherwise, I'm happy to move on. That's really dependent on whether the members feel need to talk amongst themselves or not.
No, that's fine.
Okay. All right.
We're okay, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Len, let's just give me 1 minute, please.
I do ask when you make the motions after receiving the second to address each of the motions that are being made.
Sure. Ingrid, I'm just going to confirm the numbers with you as soon as I find my sheet here.
And while I do agree that we are ultimately voting on the three numbers that comprise the total expenditures in this budget, I disagree that that is the purpose of this meeting. I think the purpose of this meeting is to respond to the comments that were made by the public, not just at that meeting, but comments that we all hear and emails that we have received about the budget, and to really try to do our best and be creative with suggestions, not just on the expenditure side, but also on the revenue side of the budget. And I completely agree with Mr. Monaco. We have to be judicious in making those changes and try to base them in data based upon previous spending history and revenue collection history. But I think that it is important that we do recognize that there are two sides of the budget, and that is in fact what we're trying to discuss this evening.
And we did. So Mike, I'll read the resolution, ask for first and second, and then certainly open up to comments. I'm assuming that works for you?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. After each one, I wish to address.
Thank you. All right, I'll read the first resolution. Resolved that the Board of Finance recommends a town government budget for fiscal year 2025-2026 in the amount of $69,116,459. I've moved the motion. I'll take a second.
So moved.
Second.
All right, open it up for comments or questions. Comments, I guess, not questions.
And again, just to reiterate for the folks at home who have maybe your budget booklets that you might have picked up at the public hearing, that there is a new budget booklet that is dated 4/16/2025, and it is $12,300 more.
Yeah. So, yeah, I am going to be splitting my vote this year, and although I'm supporting the Board of Ed, on the town side, I hope that the public understands the discretionary versus non-discretionary portions of the budget. You know, I bet you 8 out of 10 lines within this budget. We don't have a strong ability to make a change. I mean, the labor lines are contractually driven, and unless we want to propose layoffs, which I don't think we do, those labor lines are non-negotiable or non-changeable by us. So many of the lines are fixed costs, whether it be debt service, utilities, or insurance. With regard to medical insurance, you know, we listen to advice from our agents. I might think that they're a little conservative at times, and again, I may address this topic again in May. But when it comes to the town and even the overall budget, I do agree with Nancy that the non-usage of the fund balance is questionable. I know that it contradicts our overall goal of trying to build fund balance and trying to build reserves and trying to improve the credit worthiness of our town. But in this extremely difficult year, we do have to sacrifice some of our goals and some of our perceived needs. Because if we could fulfill every goal we have, there'd be at least 2 firemen in this budget, at least. But we can't make everything happen in this year of revaluation. So I'm signaling the overall disappointment with the budget, with the expenses to the taxpayer by voting no on the town side. So I just want to make that comment, sir. Thank you.
No, Mike, I appreciate it. And listen, we spent a lot of time on this board trying to get this right. And of course, our paramount concern is the taxpayers and what they're going to bear by this increase. But our overall, not our overall, but one of our other goals is to protect the financial integrity of the town, right? And that's a dance, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
We have to try and find a balance as a board between, getting the lowest possible tax for the taxpayer and protecting the town in the event all the assumptions that we make in this budget go way wrong, right? I mean,
right. Well, we're not too steadfast in that because, again, this topic may have to be revisited and reconsidered, and we might have a different opinion in a month.
I understand. I guess what I'm saying, Mike, is that I'm trying to point out to the people in the room and at home that our role here isn't just to get the lowest possible tax rate for the residents. That's one of our goals, right? But we have to do that in a conservative manner and protect the town so that we don't want to find out and be sitting here next year and find out that our expenses go high, right, and the revenues go low, right?
Right.
Or that we have a catastrophe in town. I mean, listen,
Right.
I hope to God it's not going to happen, and I'm very confident in our IT, but we've had towns where we've had to pay ransoms for cybersecurity. There's natural disasters that we have to worry
Yes.
about, right?
Our IT budget is fully funded.
Right.
Yeah, and so I want to just say that this budget does retain the quality of services that the residents expect. And so it's logical to put this out front as a first draft to the taxpayer. So,
Okay.
but when those bills come in, I can't endorse the huge increase that's there.
Understood. Anyone else have comments before we move to a vote?
I just would hope that people would realize that the huge increases are really due to the valuation.
Yes.
We tried really hard to keep everything bare bones in this budget. There's no fat in here,
Right.
you know, and that's why we can't afford to bring on the firemen. Sure, we would like that, but again, we did have that critical issue last night. The police had a critical issue, but our town was well taken care of. It was actually almost a test for us to see, could we handle that? And we could, because we have wonderful first responders in this town, both fire and police.
Thank you, Laura Jean.
I'd just like to add that while the reval certainly contributes to the overall increase in the tax bill that individual taxpayers will be facing, the cost of this budget is not a function of reval. The cost of this budget, meaning an additional $9 million over the current budget, is the result of this set of expenditures. That's it. These expenditures, given the other sources of revenue, that we have, will result in this particular budget and the cost of this budget and its contribution to taxes. But the reval will contribute to taxes, and this budget will contribute to taxes. But the reval does not determine this $9 million increase. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We have a resolution. We have a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Opposed?
No.
Mr. Hallahan and Ms. Barrett vote no. I'd like to read the second resolution, please. Resolved that the Board of Finance recommends a Board of Education budget for fiscal year 25-26 in the amount of $68,495,858. I'd like to make that motion. Would I ask for a second, please?
Make a second.
All right. Any comments from the board members?
Yeah. Like many of the members on this board, I fully support the Board of Education budgetary request. And it's supported by a huge number of folks in town from both parties. Certainly from my party, it's been unanimous, almost unanimous. But this is sort of in response to many of the comments made at the first hearing. Given the difficult issues, financial issues that the education budget and department face, I think they need the need for increased funding is clear now more than ever. As I previously mentioned, the Board of Education is starting off this next budgetary cycle in a deep hole. They've used about $1 million in reserves from their medical reserves. They've used up all their special ed reserves. And they're in another $1 million hole when it comes to the bus contract and then the higher electric rates. That's $2 million in a hole. Now, if you took that off of their request, their request would be under 4%. So that is $2 million that we have to cover just so they can try to balance next year's budget. Has nothing to do with learning. It doesn't even start to affect the quality of education that we serve. And yet, if we didn't cover it, the money would have to come from somewhere, and so that support for education would go down in a very direct way. So, yes, it's a big number, but yes, it's justified. The presentation was excellent, and I fully support the allocation that has been requested by the Board of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Hallian. Would any of the other members like to comment?
So I made two different statements at the public hearing. So I went into great detail about my feelings about both the town side of the budget and the Board of Ed side of the budget. I encourage all who are focused on the education side of the budget, please continue to stay abreast of all important developments in education. However, please also become informed about the town side of the budget, because we want everyone who casts a vote at the referendum to cast an informed vote. So I'd just like to point out that, once again, if you look at the Board of Education budgets since, let's say, 2019-20, prior to that, what we all saw in this town were budgets that were presented, and the Board of Finance trimmed them very drastically, to the tune of, some years $850,000, one year it was $1.4 million cut, another year it was $928,000, another year it was $674,000. But then there was this very dramatic change in 2019-20. Now, of course, we were all going through the beginning stages of the pandemic, but nonetheless, in that particular year, the Board of Education requested a 2.9% increase of about $1.5 million, and they received all but $19,000. In the next year, the reduction was about $200,000, but they got a 5% increase. In the next 2 years after that, they received every single penny that they requested. In the year after that, which is 23-24, they received all but $250,000. And last year was the 1 year in this particular stretch in which there was a $2.1 million reduction in the Board of Ed budget. And that came in two waves. The first $1.2 million was a reduction made by the superintendent as a result of omitting the contributions of excess cost to the Board of Ed budget. And also, I believe there were 3 or 4 different miscalculations. So in that particular year, the requested 7.3% increase was reduced down to 3.9%, but they still received an additional $2.4 million. So in this year, the Board of Ed is requesting an additional $4.5 million, and as I said before, that is 65% more than any year that they, any increase that they've ever received before. I believe the largest increase that they've ever received is $2.7 million. And so I think that $4.5 million is really a very large number, and it is certainly at the expense of the taxpayers. And so I really leave this up to the taxpayers to make an informed choice at the referendum, both on the Board of Ed budget and the town budget. Of course, you're voting yes or no, but please do your homework, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask the Board of Finance members. But I'm opposed to this Board of Education budget.
All right, thank you, Nancy. We have a motion of a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Opposed.
Ms. Barrett is opposed. Our final resolution of the evening, resolved that a total budget for the fiscal year 25-26 in the amount of $137,612,317, consisting of the town government of $69,109,000, $116,459, and a Board of Education of $68,495,858 be presented to the annual budget town meeting to be held on Monday, May 12th, 2025.
Make a motion to accept?
All right, second, please.
Second.
All right, any conversation on this resolution?
Yes, please. Obviously, making up for the effects of revaluation is an incredible hurdle for all of us. The various asset classes in the grand list have shifted the burden to the residential side, which has been mentioned by us before and by Mr. Frieda in the hearing. Economic development overall, it continues, but to just make a 1% change in the grand list means you have to bring $40 million of new property to the assessor. And that's a lot to ask, and it can't happen every year. I did receive information that some new apartment complexes came on board in the previous fiscal year, up to October 1st, and a portion of the hotel, I think, that's going up on Universal came on board. In the future, I mean, there's lots of projects in the future, Medtronic and so forth, that Mr. Fried is working on, and they may help us in future years, but it's hard to outgrow some of the issues that our town is facing. You can't make up for the increases in medical and so forth just with the grand lists all the time. But hopefully he'll get well and he'll get back out on the trail again. Anyway, of the average 20% increase in residential tax bills, about 2% is due to our losses in revenue, or a slight decline in revenue projections, and 7% is due to the increase in higher spending that's necessary, so to speak, in the budget that we've developed. And 13% of that increase is due to that rebalancing of the asset classes away from motor vehicles and personal property over to the residential side. It's nice to know that your automobile bill will go down by about 40%, which is a big decrease. So your $1,000 auto tax bill might be $600 or less. But those tax bills that come on the homes and property we have is just too substantial. So, in the words of the late great Ann Rocco, I cannot support this tax increase. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mike. Any other members wish to speak? All right, if not, we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed.
Mr. Hallahan and Ms. Bear are opposed. All three motions pass. Thank you.
Last council.
Just a second, Mike. All three motions pass. We will have the budget town meeting on Tuesday, May 12th at 7. I will take the items that Nancy mentioned. I will go back with Rich and Stacy and talk to them about them some more, and Mr. Fried as well when he's back at work, which we all hope is soon. And then, Mike, please go ahead.
No, just reiterating what's been said earlier, that I want to thank the Board of Finance and the Finance Department. This was, every year we say this is the most challenging year. Well, I think we topped it. This is the toughest, and I don't know how the public's going to handle what we were giving them. But whatever it is, we will deal with it in the best way possible. So thank you to the Finance Department for all the information they've given us to try to make the choice between something difficult and something that's worse. So, God bless us all. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. All right, we have 20 or so people here. It's 8:30. A lot of people have been waiting a long time. I do want to get everyone in, so we're going to go to public comment.
Does
And
he want to say something?
Yeah, let me just talk for 1 second, because I've heard it a few times. And I don't remember all the numbers with the Board of Ed over the last 14 years. And Nancy kind of goes to what you said. This board never cut a Board of Finance, a Board of Education budget unless one of three things happened. It failed at referendum, the medical in that 9th hour got adjusted,
Yeah,
and we readjust their number down, and there was one time we cut it
because we found a savings.
because she had a
savings.
calculation mistake in her numbers, and that is a fact. And you can look at the numbers. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
thank you, sir. In any event, what I was saying a moment ago is that we do have a little bit more people here than usual. People have been waiting for 2 hours, so obviously we're going to give everyone a chance to speak who would like to speak. Let's just try and keep it to about 5 minutes, and kind of like the town meetings, if everyone gets a chance, we'll go back around again if everyone hasn't quite had their full say. So, who would like to start? I don't see any hands.
Oh, I see Sally
I see her.
and Mary. They should have did like a lottery. They should pick numbers.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening.
Sally Buemi, 5 Blossom Drive. I would like to join in your comments wishing Mr. Frieda a speedy and full recovery.
Thank
My
you.
thoughts have been with him. Way back in the beginning of the meeting, those were good times, an issue came up about where in the budget other legal fees might be located besides the legal fee section on page 2 of the expenditure budget. One thing that occurred to me during that discussion was bond counsel fees, which we pay a lot of. When I started on the Board of Selectmen in 2013, our bond principal and interest line on page 36 was under 6 million. Now it's 10.5 million. So we've done a lot of bonding and a lot of bond counsel fees. So those would not be reflected in the expenditure budget, I
I'm
believe.
assuming those get capitalized, Rich?
Those are incorporated into the bonding themselves.
No, some of them mostly, most times they're paid out of debt service.
That's what I just said. They're incorporated in the
Out of
bond
the
line.
debt service fund or just,
Debt service fund.
yeah, okay.
Right. So that's why I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's an example of a hefty attorney fee that's not really shown in that section of attorney fees on page 2.
Yes.
Right.
That's what we
right.
were talking
Yeah.
about. So that just came into my mind during that discussion. I'm happy to have this Quinnipiac letter that came in your packet. It's 8 months too late, but we have it. And let me just give the history of this for those who might not be aware. The Quinnipiac voluntary payment has been a regular line item in our budget for many years. It's not in this year, but for all years that it has been a regular revenue line item. And we reported it as received. Last year we received it, but reported it as 0. And at the August meeting, which is when we review the previous fiscal year, both you, Mr. Chairman, and Ingrid said, it's not revenue because it came with restrictions. Then in December at a Board of Selectmen meeting, the first selectman said something shocking. He said, there were no restrictions. I decided, and I alone decided, to spend that money, $300,000 on the renovations of Northeast. So a complete turnaround from the explanation that was given in August that I accepted. I didn't say a word. But Mr. Frieda countered that, and there's nothing in the charter that allows Mr. Frieda to unilaterally spend a $300,000 revenue line item on something not in the budget. And so I believe town council was asked about this, and the solution, not the best one, a better one would have been to have a vote, but a solution was the issuance of this letter saying that it was given with restrictions. So the fact that this paper exists is proof positive that the comments that were made questioning how this was done were right and proper. So I object strongly to any member of this board continuously saying that the comments that have been made at this board is the reason we're not getting the Quinnipiac contribution. We'll see if they give it or not. This is proof positive that those comments were correct. As to talking about revenue at this particular meeting, I think it was a proper thing to bring up revenue. Yes, your motions were only on expenditures, but I think that the motivation behind Mrs. Barrett, I mean, she could speak for herself, but about bringing up revenue is, if you look at the revenue, the taxes that the property owners are paying this year, $121.8 million out of the $137 million budget, that's 88% of the budget. Last year, it was only 86%. The way to lessen the blow on the taxpayers, to shift some of the burden away from them, is by increasing non-tax revenue sources. Now, Mr. Chairman, you said, well, maybe in May we'll talk about that. We'll talk about revenue changes. Well, if the budget passes, will you talk about revenue changes? I've never seen any discussions, if the budget passes, about changing revenue sources at the May Board of Finance meeting, even going back to the 1980s when I served 4 years on the Board of Finance. Never have I seen anything but the mill rate in the proposed budget, once adopted at referendum, just set by this board. So I think this is an appropriate time to try to avoid a rejection of the budget. And by increasing some of these sources of revenue, you lessen that $121.8 million, which is, as you can see on page 6, used in the mill rate calculation. The expenditures you fixed. You all voted, and it passed by the majority vote, $137 million. But how you fund that, the revenue sources, determines the mill rate. And if you could have increased some of those revenue sources at this time and got that mill rate down, maybe it would have had a better chance of passing. Now, with it still at 29.46, I think it's going to be very difficult to pass. I don't know. Mr. Frieda said the public hearing 50-50. I'll just remind you, Mr. Chairman, last year a budget that increased the average homeowner's taxes by $600 was rejected. The average homeowner's taxes are going to be going up by $1,250 this year. So I think that the effort that Mrs. Barrett had at this particular meeting to change revenue and get that mill rate down now might have helped ease the burden on the taxpayers, and maybe would have helped with passage of the budget. Because if this budget does not pass, there will be certainly discussions on increased revenue like there was last May. That was because it was rejected. And there will be substantial cuts that nobody in this room wants to see. So I thought her effort to discuss revenue was appropriate and could have reduced this mill rate and increased the chances of it passing the first time in May. Thank you for your time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Sally. Mary, please come up.
Mary White, Summer Lane. Firstly, it was not said volunteer firefighters cannot respond. It was said they cannot respond during the day because they work. Volunteer firefighters were able to respond to the fire last night due to the time of the fire, 3:02 a.m.
Last year, no new firefighters were added. The year before, no new firefighters were added. This is the third year no new firefighters are added. Based on that history, no new firefighters added for 3 years, what did the chair mean when he said at the budget public hearing, we will be looking to add new firefighters down the road? What does down the road mean?
Down the road means that there's a lot of people in this room in the town, including the fire chief and some members of the board, who think we need additional firefighters. And I think, personally, we probably do. Okay, but when the right time is for that, I can't predict at this moment, Mary. It might be next year, I don't know. But we get requests from the department heads every year for different things. Sometimes it's capital, sometimes it's bodies. And again, that's a decision we have to make. And this year, they're not in the budget, as you know. Maybe they will be next year. I just can't predict for you, Mary.
Okay. From the movie The Hunger Games to the potential tributes before 2 names are selected during the reaping to play a game to the death, the line said to them is, "May the odds be ever in your favor." Let's talk odds. The North Haven Fire Department can respond to your 911 call. And let's talk odds. Nelson Ambulance will respond with a paramedic to your 911 call. With last year having 64 911 calls going NFU, no fire unit response, or a delayed response, or an insufficient response, with 46% of 911 calls occurring simultaneously, with 2 fire stations closed during the day, Northeast and West Ridge, with the fire engines and fire apparatus sitting in their garages, with the extreme shortage of volunteer firefighters, 19 on the roster, 15 qualified, who work during the day and cannot man the fire stations, with Nelson's 2 ambulances assigned in town, with only 1 having a paramedic, meaning only 50% odds you will receive a paramedic on the Nelson ambulance responding. And so the reality is, the odds are not ever in your favor. Your 911 call will be guaranteed to be answered by the North Haven Fire Department with its paramedics, or Nelson Ambulance responding with a paramedic. These odds are not a game. They deal with life and death. 911 calls are increasing, meaning more simultaneous calls, not only for North Haven Fire Department, but also increasing calls for Nelson Ambulance and increasing response delays. Until this board prioritizes fire department public safety by committing to and adding 2 firefighters annually to the budget, there will remain a public health and safety hazard in this town. This hazard will result in the tragedy of someone's death, either a resident or a firefighter. Since the amount of firefighters per shift, 2 at 10, 2 at 11, is actually 5 to 6 firefighters less than the National Fire Association's states that the numbers are needed for safety of the firefighters and for the safety at scenes. Thanks.
Thank you.
Jenny Caldwell, 69 Kimberly Circle. I think the definition of insanity is continuing to do the same thing over and over again and thinking they're going to get a different result. And I've heard since the time I've been coming to the Board of Finance meetings how difficult of a finance year it is this year. That is a comment that, as I think one of the Board of Finance members said, we say year after year after year. And yet nothing changes about how this board looks at and approaches the budget process. Our budget is going to continue to balloon. There's nothing different other than the reassessment about the expenses. Those expenses are going to continue to balloon. So it's time for this board to start looking at other solutions. And I'll throw a few at you that I've mentioned over and over again. And Mr. Frieda mentioned during his presentation, if this budget fails, maybe instead of having your leaves just stuck out on the street, they have to be bagged and be picked up. Maybe if you want your leaves picked up, maybe you pay for that. Maybe if you want to have bulk pickup, that you pay for that. When you go to the convenience center, it shouldn't be unlimited dumping, no matter how much and how much you dump, how much it weighs. That is helping a few people in town, but not the majority of residents. And the number one priority should be that if someone calls 911, there needs to be guaranteed response. And the idea that the board is taking recommendations from a former fire commissioner who has never served as a firefighter or ran a fire department over the words of the chief, who has made this argument over and over and over again that more firefighters are needed. The police department, when the police chief comes in and says, I need more personnel, this board has responded. He has gotten more personnel fairly consistently. And yes, it wasn't quite to the amount that he requested this year, but he got a new police officer last year. He got a new police officer this year in this upcoming budget. And there was comments about, you know, that if you add firefighters, you don't know how much it's going to cost. The chief laid out what it was going to cost. There is an engine. You wouldn't have to buy a new engine. There are engines for those firefighters to use. So but the police officer, when you add a police officer, you are also adding a car and equipment for the car. So maybe that's something that we look at. If you're talking about personnel, several years back, magically we ended up needing 2 department heads for the Department of Public Works. Maybe it's time to combine that position back together and reduce the salaries that go from having 2 department heads to having 1. And then there are large raises in this budget. Maybe those raises get reduced this year. So there's a lot of possibilities to look at in order to fund something that we are hearing over and over and over again, not only from our fire chief, but from our deputy chief and from the firefighters and the firefighters union. So it's time to take it seriously, because as Mary said, we're talking about people's lives. We're also talking about their property. You're asking people to pay more in taxes, and if their houses go on fire, yeah, they may not lose their life, but depending on their response and the ability to respond, the loss, the amount of loss of their homes happens very quickly. And again, that is information we are getting from the experts that are in fire safety. So I will not be voting for this budget, not because of my tax increase, but because I won't vote to pay more money when I don't have the basic service of knowing that if I call 911, someone can respond. Thank you.
I just want to say, I don't think when I mentioned Mr. Criscoll earlier, I meant to say, or I don't think I said it at all, in fact, that we were taking his recommendation over the recommendation of the chief. He's happened to be one voice that I mentioned, amongst others, including yourself, who's been up here several times advocating for the fire department. So it's not that we're not listening to the chief. The chief makes probably one of the best presentations we get every year of all the department heads. So I guess my own personal is we have to weigh everyone's opinion. We listen to the people who come to the town meetings. By the way, I don't recall anyone from the fire department, from the unit, speaking at the town meeting. I may have been wrong, but I don't recall anyone speaking about that. So I guess my point, Jen, was that I happen to mention Mr. Criscoll because he just was one person who has perhaps a slightly different view than others. Not that we're taking his, or myself, not taking his view over that of the chief's. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Thank you. David Cohen, 55 Tokenique. Hi, everybody. I just want to respond to a couple things folks have said about the fire department. I've mentioned before I'm a volunteer. Your 64 is 64 too many calls that don't go answered, but we're talking about thousands of calls that are put into 911 every year. So I want to be careful with this, but you are in good hands with the North Haven Fire Department. I can guarantee you that. Folks were there last night. Folks were there 90 plus, I don't know what the percentage is, but 64 out of thousands. So it's a very, very low percentage of the time when a call does not have an answer. And we look at those moments as terrible moments. And we never want those moments to happen in town. And would more firefighters or more rigs or more engines help with that? Sure. Will they ensure that there will never be one call that goes unanswered? Probably not. There's probably going to be a moment when there's engines out at 4 different places and a call comes in and there's just nothing. There's no one there to respond within minutes, which is really what happens the vast majority of the time. So it's a tricky equation. And I just want to be clear about some of the numbers we're talking about here. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I've been listening to some of my Democratic friends today. I don't need to make this about politics, but you're making me want to switch parties. Hearing that so many of my Democratic friends have come up and have really been super critical of this budget and have said openly and in public that they're looking for this budget, they're voting no. I'm really unhappy to hear that. And I'm unhappy to hear our third select woman say the same thing. She didn't say she's going to vote no, but it seems as if she is pretty sure it's going to fail and she's not doing anything to make sure it doesn't fail. And I really, really urge my Democratic friends to get out there and tell people to vote for this budget. Vote yes for this budget. The outcome of a no vote on the referendum will be devastating to students, to public safety, to all of the things that you come up here and you want. The outcome will be devastating. So I'm urging all people out there, Democrats, Republicans, to vote yes on the budget. And there will be plenty of Democrats who are out there who are urging folks to vote yes on the budget. And notwithstanding the fact that you're hearing from some of my Democratic friends say no, I don't understand their logic, and I don't understand why they aren't out there saying to folks, we need this budget to pass. I understand the budget isn't perfect. No budget is. You speak a lot to this. This is a balancing act. And a lot of times the balancing act makes a lot of people unhappy. But sometimes the best negotiations end in both sides being not particularly happy. Not everybody can be happy with everything that's going to happen here tonight. But if we vote no, if this budget doesn't pass, I am very concerned about the outcomes here. I have 2 kids in the school. We will have to let go of teachers. Public service will suffer. Public safety will suffer. And this is not what this town needs right now. Okay? We have a wonderful, wonderful history of doing more with less. Let's get out there, vote yes. And I agree, there's been some wonderful ideas put forth about how in the future we can increase our revenue, how we can look differently at the budget and the process. But now is not the time for that. Now is the time to bring folks to the voting booth on the 20th and vote yes. And so I'm standing firm with my Republican friends and urging people to go out and vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Anyone else like to speak this evening? All right, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
Make the motion.
Second, please.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all for coming.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.